Hello there survivors, and welcome back to another build tutorial in ARK Survival Ascended. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to build this simple Rohan inspired house or Viking house, because I mean that's kind of in a similar style. You won't need any mods to build this house. It is all doable in vanilla and it will look quite good, but you can choose to build it with the Viking builder skins, because then, especially the roof, you wouldn't have to build out of thatch, since you can use the skins to get the same look, or maybe even a slightly better looking thatch texture. But I'll leave that totally up to you, because as I said, it is definitely doable without needing any mods and just using the vanilla structures. As always, if you enjoy seeing these build tutorials and you want to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and feel free to leave suggestions for future builds that you'd like to see down in the comments below. And as usual, we want to start by placing down the foundations, and for this one we want to go 3 wide, and then for the main part of the building we're going 9 long, and then again of course 3 wide, and then we can bring it all the way across until we have this entire shape, and we can of course fill it in. And then on one of the sides we're going to have an addition, so after 3 foundations we're going to go out by 3 more, same over there, and then we can also fill in that shape. So this kind of T shape is what we need as the foundation for the entire building. Then for now we can take out some wooden pillars. We can start placing them right over here, so not all the way at the end, but just one inwards, and then at the end we can actually place 4 of them just like that. Then we can have pillars along those sides. We can do the same thing here at this end, place the pillars like this, and then on the longer side we want to just make sure that these pillars line up. So the gap in the middle is 3, and then the gap on the sides is 2. And then of course we have one more side to do, and the same thing, gap of 2 before the pillars, and then at the end we want to have those 4 pillars coming off the structure. Then we can actually take out our stone pillars. We can add them underneath as a little bit of extra detail. I think that always looks a little bit nicer, breaking up the pattern of these foundations, and also making sure that these wooden pillars don't look like they're just kind of floating on these foundations. I think the proper support always looks a little bit nicer. So we kind of just want to go around and make sure we add all these pillars in the right places around the entire building. And then you can choose whether you want to go for a full stone staircase to the inside. Yeah, it kind of depends on what you want. I kind of like going for the wooden look, but again, it depends on your personal preferences. And then on the inside, we also want to add something a little bit more special. So on one of the sides right here, so after these pillars with the bigger gap, we want to go in by 1 more and then remove 3 foundations like this. You can do it either on this side or on that side, even I guess here if you really want to. You just need a gap of 3 foundations, and then we need to go in with these quarter stone ramps on both ends of the gap we've just created, and then we can add 2 ceilings in the middle. This is kind of to get a little Viking cooking spot, and especially with the Viking builders cosmetics, this looks great with the cooker or the grill. But even without skins, if you're just using vanilla structures, having a campfire and a cooking pot in here kind of looks really cool and appropriate for this Rohan themed or Viking themed builds. So now the foundations for the entire building are down, it's time to give it even more shape. So as I said, you could either go for the stone staircases and fill in the sides, or just add some of these wooden stairs. I kind of like that look. Of course, it is a little weaker material, but I think it still works quite well. So we want to do that. And then for the sides here of the fronts, we want to add some quarter walls on the side. So at the ends here of all of these sections, we want to add those in, and on top of those we actually want to take out our thin half beams and add a little edge right on top of those structures, just to give it a little bit more detail. So we'll do that for all of these on every end of the building. And once we've got that, we can actually finish most of these pillars. So in the middle, we want to raise these up by another full pillar to get the full height of the building. And then for all the remaining pillars, it's actually going to be half a pillar higher. So we want to kind of go around and making sure that we add half a pillar on the ends of all of these to get the right shape. So this will give us slightly more height for the building we're about to make. And then of course it's time to add some doors. Here over this side I would add a normal doorway, the same over there. And then on this side you could perhaps go for a double doorway if you like. Then we could also have some windows right next to the entrances, of course. So we'll do that for all of these sides so that you can actually look out and enjoy the views. And then we want to make sure that we can add some windows into the other sections here. So first of all, we're going to go around these sections and add in a little quarter wall at the bottom corners. So we're just going to go around. We're not going to do it there in the middle. And we're just going to fill all those in. Then we're going to go to the alternative version and add another quarter wall right on top of that. The reason we're doing the alternative version is so that it will match up texture-wise with the windows that we'll place, and there won't be any gaps left. So now you can snap the wall in there and it will fit perfectly without leaving any gaps, which is exactly what we want for those. So we want to add those on all of these sides where we've just created these little gaps and lined out the windows basically. And then here for this middle section we can completely fill it in like that. And then on top of all of this we want to make sure that we add another layer of quarter walls to make sure that we raise up these walls to the heights of the pillars, just because we want a little bit more space on the inside. Otherwise it kind of feels like you're bumping your head most of the time. So we're just adding that little bit of extra headroom when you're running around on the inside. Just gives you a little extra space there. And especially for taller characters, this will look a little bit nicer, a little bit more natural. Then we can bring out our doors, of course, and we can go around adding them in. And then also the windows. Personally, I like to make sure that the windows are opened from the top. I kind of like the look for that, but of course feel free to play around with your own preferences for these. But I kind of like the way it looks when we open these and they kind of flip up like that. But again, totally up to your own preferences what you go for. Just wanted to share you what I like to do. And of course you want to open all of the windows up at least so that you do get a little bit of light into your base. And we also want to then take out our quarter stairs, and right from this pillar we want to add a staircase up so that we can have a second layer above this, of course. And first off, we'll take out some quarter ceilings. We'll go along the side of the building, bringing it up to the first pillar, and then also bringing it along this side all the way to that pillar over there. Then we want to do the same thing here on the other side. Personally, I would make sure that these are lined up in the same direction. Just feels a little bit nicer if that is the case, in my opinion, because otherwise, texture wise it would look a little bit strange. And then here on the other side, of course, you want to do the same. If the textures aren't lining up, an easy way to do it is to add a different wall to snap to, because that is kind of how we get these directions. So there you'll see that's the way we want it to line up. Now it will line up the same way as we have over on the other side, and we can bring this all the way across the side now, and it should all have the same alignment. There we go. So that is the building extended. And now with these additional little quarter ceilings, we get some new snap points, and that's what we want to use to fill in the rest of these walls. And basically we can create the roof shape just like that we're gonna do that for all of these wall sections. So first of all, we want to add in these low layers of slope walls, have some full walls in between, of course, and then another layer of the slope walls on top. Now, to add a little bit more details to these walls, what you could do is have a trophy, because that could just be a shield. You know, if it's a Rohan or Viking building, that would kind of make sense, but it kind of adds a little bit of extra detail to these walls. But that's not the only wall we want. We also want to create that shape for the roof right up here on this layer. So we'll have another one going up like this, and we'll have that on all of the different sides to keep that pattern going and add in a little bit of extra detail for this simple house. Yeah, just to create a little bit more shape and support for the roof, and yeah, just adds a little detail. And again, here what you could do is add another one of these trophies, but in this cases you probably, once you have one, of course, want to add a little Rex skull, because then it sticks out, of course, and it adds even more detail. And it's just a nice way to bring a little bit of that ARK vibe back into your builds. Always looks quite cool, and I mean, it's not the easiest thing to get right away, but also not the most difficult thing to get. So yeah, definitely a nice thing to decorate with, as you can see, because it makes your walls just a little less flat and boring. Then before we start the roofs, we want to also make sure that we add in some details along this side. So first of all, we're going to have these slope walls. Now this is where the frontier skin comes in, because we want to create some windows, and the easiest way to do that is with the frontier skins on these sloped parts, just so that you can watch and look inside. Otherwise, you could just have maybe a pillar in there, maybe some railings in there if you want to keep it open as a window, but you don't have the frontier skins. But honestly, the frontier skins are really good and definitely well worth it if you don't have them already. They're part, of course, of the Bob Tall Tales DLC. And then one more thing we want to do is take out these slope walls, and we kind of want to make sure that we add them on the corners here where we have this extra window section, kind of as supports, and we'll see in a moment why exactly. But yeah, we just want to have those supports for over there. Then we can actually take out our roofs again. We want to take out our quarter roofs, make sure that this sticks out a little bit, and bring it up along the front here. We want to make sure that we add this nice little detail in at the end, and then we can continue these back down again just like that to add a little bit more detail. We'll do the same thing right over here on the other sides of the roof, and I guess this is kind of like a little, well, recognizable little detail, especially if you want to do a few of these houses and buildings. This is kind of what will tie them together. Again, these designs are mostly inspired by the Rohan houses in Edoras, but of course that is again very similar to Viking style houses. And then we can also actually add these in along these side windows that we have at the back of the building. Same kind of principle of creating these little additions that will tie the whole build together, add a bunch of details, and just make the whole roof a lot less boring, as you can see. So yeah, we'll have another section there. And then before we add the roof, let's focus on the inside here and actually add in all floors. So first of all, we can have a little quarter ceiling there, and then right next to this we want to have full ceilings. We can at least fill in this entire section opposite the staircase. We probably also fill in this entire section to give yourselves quite a lot of room. And then here on the inside you can kind of pick and choose how much of this you want to cover. I would probably say about this, maybe go for a shape like that, just because that makes the most sense, because the whole reason we'll have some of the details in the roof is to let out the smoke. So at least part of this you probably want to keep open, and this way you kind of can quite easily. And of course then we can add some railings here to the corners, We can in fact also have a little bit of the pillars going on to make this all look a little bit nicer. And that just means that you have a little bit of extra space up here for maybe a bedroom or a little bit of extra storage just to utilize the space of the little simple house. And then of course it's time to start working on the roofs. Now the roofs are a little bit of a puzzle. So first off, we'll start right here and we'll have 2 roofs right there. And then again, 2 roofs right there. We'll do the same thing here on the other side. And then after that, we actually want to take out quarter roofs and have a full line of them going across the building like this. Then we can take out the corner pieces and add them right next to that to create this corner. We then want to do a full roof again above this to make sure that that lines up all the way. And then again, we can have the corner pieces right over there. We can have our full roofs there, which will make the corner to connect these 2 parts. Then over here, we can have our full roofs just like this. Same thing here over on the other side. And then once again, we'll need a layer of quarter roofs to fill in the gaps. But that way, we can easily align all of this without having any need for overlapping at all. And then before we finish the other side of the roof as well, we actually want to change this part a little bit. So that roof we will take out, and we will take out that piece over there as well. Instead, what we will do is take out our quarter pieces and add them in a shape like this. And we'll do the exact same thing over here on this side. So again, take that one out and take that one out and add this shape instead, because we're gonna make a tiny little addition to the roof to add a little bit more detail to it. So we'll have some half pillars coming up from this, and we'll have some quarter walls in between those, just like this, to kind of break up that section of the roof. And then we can start to work on the other side over here. It's actually going to be quite simple. Of course, we'll need these corners right along these little windows that we've created. So that's an easy place to start with. And after that, we should actually be able to fill in part of it quite easily, just like this. And then, of course, we can fill in these in the middle and this one again here over to the side without much issues. Now then over here, of course, we want to repeat that little pattern for the additional details on the roof. We're going to do the same thing over here. Again, creating that shape. And then, of course, we can have these little half pillars come up from it and stick out. And then, of course, have these quarter walls in between, just like we had on the other side. And then to finish the rest of the roof, it's just taking out our full roofs again and have 3 more of them right there in the middle. And then we only need to focus on these sections. Now, what we want to do here is make sure that we get the snap points for the pillars. And then we want to have the roof sections right in between there, and even create that little detailed shape that we know for the rest of the roof. And we want to add that on both ends, only on the outside of the pillars, as you can see. So we want to get the right snap points for all of those, and then add in the whole shape just like that. They will then do the same thing for this side again. Want to make sure that we get the right snap points there and just fill in these sections. Then in between this, we'll actually have our stairs so that the smoke or the air supposedly can leave. So for the design, we want to keep that, and we definitely don't want to misplace these. So let's fix that up. And then the only little detail that is left is taking out some ramps and adding them here along the edge of this little addition, and that will finish these details on the roofs, which again will definitely make your roof stand apart, make them feel a little bit more detailed, and they're supposed to let the smoke out of your building, of course. And then if we take a closer look, you can see the inside. We have a decent amount of space here on the first floor. Then we can take this little staircase up, and we have some more space up here. So yeah, again, it's a relatively simple design. As I said, it's not hard to do. You can definitely do this quite early on. And if you combine it with some of the other designs that I've done so far, it is an easy way to have a few little houses in this theme. Maybe you're building your own village. Maybe you have multiple tribe members, each wanting their own house. Or you want to have dedicated houses for specific things in your base. And this is a cool way to do that in a Rohan themed style. And I haven't really done any interior for this build, but yeah, the most you want to do is probably add something like this. This is with the Viking Builders cosmetic. It's looking really, really cool. And if you're going for the Viking Builders cosmetic, you can also, of course, skin the entire build, and that would look something like this. The advantage of doing that is now you could even build it out of some stronger materials, especially the roof, because you would no longer need thatch, because you can make it look like thatch with one of these primitive skins, which is a really nice bonus. Of course, it's just a little bit stronger and maybe a little bit more practical. And I would definitely also advise maybe making some of these little gardens around the build. It's quite easy to do. I can quickly show you what I would do in such a case. So for example, if we want to have a little garden here on this side, what we would do is take out some of these pieces. We would have the fence stone foundations. Now in some cases you could snap it right to the corner, otherwise you might want to make sure that you look just far enough away from the corner to get that little bit started. And then the same thing over here, we would kind of go for a shape like this. Maybe you would have a little half pillar along the edges, and that's how you would kind of start to create something like this. And without a skin, I would always flip these railings around so that the stone part is on top, and then you'll have a little garden there in the corner to decorate. And of course, you could also make a bigger enclosure if you want to maybe make a farm field. And some tips if you want to have farm fields like this: I've used normal plant crops, so just crop plots here with the rustic skin. The Klinger's rustic skin has an option to make it look like heaps of dirt. Honestly, it's quite surprising we don't have something like this in the game already. That's how you can easily make some of these fields. Of course, you won't have any greenhouse efficiency, but if you combine it like that, you can get some really cool details. And especially, of course, if you also maybe take out the plant pot and the shovel from the Bob Talltail DLC, you can get some plants and decorate even more. Or of course, if you're using mods, there's also custom cosmetic ways to add plants to your builds, or of course installing server-side mods like JVH Landscaping to really bring it to life. But that is how you can transform these simple designs, simple houses, into a very lovely little village. And with the addition of the Viking builders, you get even more options for decor. This is just on one of those trophies on the wall. This is a water tank with the skins, and then there's many other little details that you can add because of those cosmetics. So if you want to build a lot in this style, might definitely be worth considering getting it, because it's quite a nice looking one. But again, you can also definitely make these builds without any mods, without any skins, as you can see, and it will still look really, really nice. Anyway, that's going to be it for today's build tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate it and really helps me out. And of course, feel free to leave suggestions for future builds down in the comments below. For now, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.